I assume something. I assume that almost all of you are at least aware of what a TED Talk is, right? Anybody not know what a TED Talk is? Perfect, okay. So for the next little while, we're going to have a series of 3 TED Talks broken by opportunities for you to converse about the nature of those TED Talks. The first will be presented by Dr. Luke Goble around the concept of what is college and what is it for. Dr. Goble.
Morning, everybody. You guys awake? All right. Well, I have a Twitter handle. It's @FaithInPolitic. If you hear anything this morning that you want to chat or you hear a quote that you like, I'd love to hear from you, but not during this time. All right, so I'm going to ask you to put your cell phones away for now. So it's my task this morning to respond to this question: what is college and what is it for? This may seem like a question with an obvious answer, or maybe you've been wondering the same thing. Or maybe, and I suspect that deep down in your hearts, this is the case for many, if not most of you. It's a question that you secretly wonder about, and maybe even experience a little anxiety about, but you don't really want to ask because you're afraid that you might discover an answer that you're not prepared to deal with. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly what college is for. At its most basic level, college is and always has been a place to ask questions about the world around us that just living in that world does not necessarily afford us. And this is a question: what is college for? Or more personally, why am I here? That I hope you will continue to ask. Because there are many answers to the question, and those answers depend, at least in part, on who or what you are listening to. There are messages in our culture. They might come from your high school teachers or counselors, and some of these messages say that everyone should go to college because it's a gateway to future opportunity. There are other messages, and maybe you've heard some of these from friends or family members, and increasingly we hear these from sources in journalism and the media that say college is a waste of time and money. Most of these, however, don't tell us what it is supposed to be for. How many of you are part of the first generation in your family to go to college? That's right. I was a first-generation college student myself, and I think we're especially vulnerable to these cultural messages. My dad barely got his GED, and my mom attended community college for a year, and though they were both very intelligent people, they didn't have the experience of college to help me understand and navigate how to approach it and make the most out of it. So I'm speaking to you now this morning out of what I wish I knew then. As a professor, I think about you, each of you, nearly every day, wondering how I might communicate to you a way to begin to view your college experience that will change the very way you experience it. At first, because I'm a historian and I really appreciate context, I thought I would go into a little history lesson about what college has been and what it is now. I was going to tell you about the days before there was college, when students walked with Socrates through the streets of Athens or sat at the feet of Solomon, and later monks, because they wanted to acquire wisdom. I was going to tell you about the earliest universities in the Middle Ages in Europe, which were only for young men and only after having prepared by studying extensively in the areas of grammar, rhetoric, logic, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. I was going to tell you about how universities were created all over Europe to satisfy a growing thirst for knowledge, and with the belief that these institutions would benefit society. I was also going to tell you how in the early United States, colleges were founded by religious bodies. Harvard College, now university, my alma mater, was founded in 1636 and graduated its first class of 9 students, who were all white men, in 1642. Among those 9, who were all trained in classical and religious texts, primarily in Greek and Latin, 3 became physicians, 5 continued as ministers, and 1 became a politician of sorts in England. It was believed at this time that the future leaders, ministers, magistrates, governors, should be trained in classical literature, speech, and writing. At the start of the Revolutionary War, there were only about 750 college students out of a population of roughly 2 million in the American colonies. That's 0.03% of the population. By contrast, in 2011, there were 21 million students enrolled in degree-granting institutions out of a population of 310 million. That's 6.8%, and if you want to do the math, it's 226 times the percentage, or 28,000 times the number as in 1776. This statistic alone bears a truth that's in stark contrast to today's trends. For most of its history, college has been inaccessible to most people. Until 1837, when Oberlin College became the first college to admit women and African Americans, only white men and primarily the sons of wealthy, well-connected families attended college. And this was still largely true until after World War II, just 60 years ago. I was going to tell you all that. Okay, I know I just did, but I was going to tell you more, except something else kept popping into my head. College dropout. No, not the idea or the fear that some of you might not make it. I believe every one of you has the desire and potential necessary to succeed in college. You know, College Dropout, Kanye West's debut album, and the cultural messages embedded within. How many people know this song, School Spirit? All right, not that many of you. If you know the lyric, you can say it with me. In this song, he says this: "Told them I finished school and I started my own business. They say, oh, you graduated? No, I decided I was finished. Chasing y'all dreams and what you've got planned. Now I spit it so hot you got tanned. Back to school and I hate it there, I hate it there. Everything I want, I gotta wait a year, I wait a year." I'm not endorsing the profanity, objectification of women, or the glorification of a superficial materialistic life that shows up in West's music. Instead, I believe in College Dropout we find several messages that are ways of answering the question, what is college and what is it for? And they're messages that can derail you from getting all you can out of your college experience. The first message is that for Kanye anyway, college was chasing y'all dreams and what you've got planned. He felt like it was somebody else's plan for him. You may find yourself here because of someone else who encouraged, pushed, cajoled, drove, or paid for you to be here. But if you don't find your own reason to be here, you're not going to get out of your college experience all that you could. This does not have to happen overnight, but you need to make the reason you're here your own. Secondly, there's a tendency to equate college with what you get at the end, a degree. This particular message goes something like this: college is not cheap, and if all you end up with at the end is a piece of paper and an unemployment slip, what was the point? This idea that a college degree has little value in the real world is false on its face. You heard Dr. Cook's remarks about how in 2013, people with a college degree made 98% more on average than those without one, the largest earning gap ever. But beyond this reality, college is about much more than just a degree. There's no doubt that the possession of a piece of paper and a record, a diploma, that says you fulfilled all the requirements set forth for a particular degree is a reality in today's world. It's required for many employment opportunities or as a prerequisite to even study other fields like law and medicine. This was not always the case, but it is today. But college is about some other things. One of those other things is training. Many people see college as not just the credentials, the piece of paper at the end, but the actual skills you gain to do particular things. Some of you may want to train to be a social worker, a teacher, a counselor, a pastor, and the credential at the end is more closely tied to the training you need to do particular things with competence. Some of you don't know what you're training for, but I can tell you that regardless of what you choose to major in, you will experience training in effective communication, critical and creative thinking, and collaborative problem solving. And you can see from this recent survey, it just so happens, or not so coincidentally, there's actually a design behind this. These are some of the skills that employers say that they most want. The third thing I want to talk about is growth and change. One of the beautiful but also difficult things about college is that it should make you different. Not pretentious or elitist, but different. The Latino writer Richard Rodriguez understood how much his education would affect the rest of his life and relationships. He writes in Hunger of Memory, "If, because of my schooling, I had grown culturally separated from my parents, my education finally had given me ways of speaking and caring about that fact." For him, education became something that opened possibilities instead of closing them. Beyond affecting us culturally, college's education affects your deepest aspirations, opening up a world of possibility. As my colleague, Dr. Timothy Peterson, has been known to say, we want our students to live lives that are satisfying and satisficing. That is, we want you to be able to pay the bills while you continue to pursue the most meaningful life possible. And in order to do that, you need to acquire some things to help in that pursuit. One of these things is the ability to engage ideas with wonder and with discrimination. A lot of those ideas are still presented to us in written form, right? Books, articles, essays, whether in print or on the internet, but also visually in film and video, and in conversations with friends, family members, and strangers. Yes, even on Facebook and Twitter. Engaging and responding to ideas in all those contexts in discriminating, critical, and grounded ways is necessary in the pursuit of a meaningful life. The professor and essayist Mark Edmondson puts it this way. He says, "In reading, I continue to look for one thing, to be influenced, to learn something new, to be thrown off my course and onto another, better way. In order to pursue the most meaningful life possible, we need to learn to read in new ways and to be thrown off our courses." But do you need college for this? Let me digress a little bit as I try to respond. This summer, I had the privilege of doing two things I've always wanted to do. I ran a marathon in May, and I built a treehouse for my kids in June. Could I have woken up one day and run a marathon? Maybe. I'm a pretty fit guy. But I also might have died like the guy for whom marathon is named. No, I entered into training. I consulted strategies, nutrition plans, and had a group of people engaged in that journey with me who provided advice, experience, and encouragement when I wanted to quit. Similarly, could I have climbed up the tree and started nailing wood up there? Yeah, probably. My wife would have never let my kids go up there, and I might have killed the tree, maybe myself, but I could have done it. Instead, I consulted some wise friends with knowledge of carpentry, like Professor Baker. I studied plans, watched videos, and acquired the right tools. And when I screwed up, like when I nailed the deck boards upside down, I had someone there to advise and gently correct me. You may not plan on running a marathon or building a treehouse anytime in the near future, but you are already engaged in building something much more important and lasting. You are building a meaningful life. Do you want to have good tools? Do you want to have guides? Do you want to have co-participants in your journey, offering you experience, encouragement, and the occasional shot of espresso? You're in the right place. Beyond the whirl of what the world says, at Warner Pacific College, we believe that's what college is for. I have some questions that I'd like you to reflect on in your groups, and peer mentors, you can lead in these questions, and if there's someone else, if there's not a peer mentor or transfer guide, you can just jump in. So we have about 15 minutes to discuss these questions. So first, what are some of the messages that you've heard about the purpose of college, and what is their source? How does what you've heard this morning challenge or affirm the way you will approach college at Warner Pacific? And what more do you hope to get out of your college education? Thanks.